Hello and welcome to our next tutorial. Today we are going to be looking at making our platform gamer scroll to the side. Okay, so today's starting, I'm going to give you some template code. Find the template file and download it, and it should look like this. And if I run it, it's basically in exactly the same place as we had last time. We have platforms that I can jump up there like that. Okay, there's a platform I can jump on. However, I've actually made more platforms to the side that you can't currently see. So if I go to the code, and I'll show you this, we have platforms being created down here, if I can just find it here. 1, 2, 3, 4 platforms, but you'll notice 2 of these platforms are beyond the bounds of the screen, with our screen currently be set to 800 wide, but our platforms are beyond the screen, and at the moment we can't access them. We are going to make it today so our whole game scrolls to the side and you can access these platforms and move along the screen. So our finished game today will look something like this. Platforms, and as we move right, the screen scrolls over right or left and we can access new platforms, and at the end we should be able to get to the end of the level and it's going to tell us their end of level. Okay, so we're making a simple game. We can scroll to the side either left or right. Okay, so to do this, the first thing you do, download the template code. You notice most of it is exactly the same as last time. We've got our player class here with all the actions of left, right and stop. We've got our update that updates the player and it's checking against the blocks to see if we've collided with them, both vertically and horizontally. We've got our jump, our gravity and things like that, and then we've also got our platform class that we created, so we can jump and draw the platforms onto the screen. Okay, and our little list here, which we did at the end of the last video, where we are creating the platforms, and as I mentioned, these platforms will be done so they're off the screen. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is go down to just before the for loop, and let's make some space here. Okay, we're going to create our 2 variables here. And these variables are going to be for world shift and world limit. Okay, we're going to create 2 variables, world shift, which is going to keep track of how much the world has moved, left or right, positive to the right or negative to the left. And I'm also going to have a world limit, which is going to be how big our level is, how big our world is essentially. And I'm setting that to 1500 to start with. Okay, so 2 variables just put in there before the main while loop. Do that now and then move on. Okay, so if we've done that, the next thing we're going to do, if you go down, in our main loop at the moment, we've got our events for key down and key up, and we put in some code here to check the player's position. Okay, and we did it so that your player, if he went too far to the right, it keeps him within the screen. If he goes too far to the left, it doesn't let him go past 0 on the X axis. So basically this code stops your player from leaving the screen. So what I'm going to do for the minute is I'm actually going to comment that out. I'm going to highlight that and I'm going to comment it out. So it's there, but we're going to use basically similar but different code. Okay, so I'm going to code this again now. We're going to take some changes to detect when your player has moved so far to the right or so far to the left. Okay, so this code is going to check if player gets near the right side of the screen. And if he does, we're going to shift the world. Okay, and the code we're going to have is if player.rect.right, basically the same as above, gets bigger or equal to 500 pixels. So if it's moved 500 pixels to the right, we are going to work out how much different the player has moved. Player.rect.right minus 500. And then we are going to set the player.rect.right to 500. Okay, so basically that's going to keep the player always at 500 if he's moving right. It's not going to let the player go beyond 500 and walk off the screen, but it's also going to calculate how much extra the player has gone right minus that 500, so we can calculate the difference he's moved. Okay, and that's going to be helpful in a second. Now what we're going to do is for each platform in our platform list, remember we've got a list of platforms we created at the top with all the platforms in, we're going to move platform.rect.x, the x position of the platform, we are going to minus it, whatever the diff has been calculated as. So however much the player has moved, we are going to then move the platform that amount, minus it so the platforms move. So basically, instead of the player moving, it's everything else that's going to move. All the platforms are going to move. The player always stays in the middle of the screen, and the platforms are moved either left or right. And also, so we can keep track of how much the player has moved in total, how much the world has shifted in total, we're also going to increment the world shift. So world shift plus equals diff. So whatever the difference is the player's moved, we're going to add that to the world shift so we can keep an overall total of how much the player has moved right or left. Now that's dealing with the player moving right. And if I run that now, you should see, if I move to the right, if I go anything beyond 500, all the platforms get shifted. My player doesn't move any further, if I leave my mouse there, than more than 500, but the platforms get shifted. However, at the moment, it only works with going right. If I go back left and go beyond, look, I can go off the screen. Okay, so basically what we've got to do is exactly the same thing for the left. Now, again, I could copy and paste this. Sorry, I could type it out from scratch, but being a little bit lazy, I'm going to copy this whole section of code, copy, 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 make sure I'm in line with that existing one, and we're going to change it. This time, check if the player nears the left side of the screen, and then shift the world. And guess what? We're going to change these values. Instead of right, that's going to be left, and instead of greater than, we are less than 120. So if the player goes less than 120 to the left, we are going to calculate the difference. Now to do this, we're going to use different numbers for this. So I'm going to say 120 minus the player.rect.left. So basically every time he moves, we're going to subtract the difference from 120 of the player. And then finally, we're going to set the left of the player to never move past 120, so he cannot leave the screen. You can keep pressing left, but he'll never go past 120. Okay, and then this time, we are going, instead of minusing the difference, for each platform and things we are in left, we are going to add the difference. So basically all the platforms are going to shift the other way, to the right. We don't move, the platforms move. And world shift, instead of adding it to the world shift, we're going to minus. So basically you can move lots to the right and then move back to the left and be back at the start again. The world shift would be 0. So we can either add to the world shift or minus the world shift depending on how far you've moved left or right. Okay, check that code so far with your own, and once you are happy with it, run it, and you should have something where your player can move right, jump, 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 and then he can move left, and as soon as he gets past 120, all the platforms shift left again. So we can shift right and left. Okay, we have shifting platforms, which is the basis for what we want to do. Okay, however, at the moment, there is one problem. If I keep going right, 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 I could go on forever there. My platforms would keep shifting left until oblivion, basically. It would keep going on, and there's nothing left in my game. So what we could do with is something to detect when our player has got to the end of the level, wherever that might be. So if you remember, I've already got a variable up here called world limit that keeps track of how big our world is going to be. And this number could be 2000, 2500, depending on how big your game is. So what we're going to do, just after that new code we've added, I'm going to put a bit more space in here again, and we are going to calculate the current position or current pos of our player. And our current position of our player is player.rect.x, wherever their x position is, plus whatever value is saved in the world shift. Remember, the world shift keeps a track of how much the world has shifted in total. So what our current position of the X player plus whatever the value of the world shift gives us our current overall X position in the world. Okay, that won't do anything at the moment, but it does keep we have now got a variable to keep track of our current position. So finally, what we're going to do is we are going to check to see if our current position is bigger or equal to the world limit. So has our player gone beyond that world limit, that 1,500 we set up earlier? If it has, now you could do lots of things here. I could run another sub-program or something within our player that says game over or game complete. If you've got multiple levels, you could go to the next level. Just for the sake of this tutorial to be easy, I'm going to add in a message that pops up on the screen. Now I'm going to cheat here. Here's one I made earlier. Okay, this is just using a standard font, the standard inbuilt font. I've set it to size 50. I've created a variable called text that with a message that says end of level, and I've just set it to black text. And then I've just blitted the text to the screen at positions 100 and 100, so it's kind of in the middle of the room somewhere. Okay, that's really basic text there. So if the current position of the player gets bigger than the world limit, it's just going to show that text on the screen. Pause the video here if you need to copy that down or try and do your own message. Okay, hopefully you have. Let's give this a try then. Now if I run my game, if I move to the right of the game and I manage to get past the end of the level here, a little message pops up that says end of level. Now if I go back, that actually disappears in this example, okay? Because as soon as I move beyond the 1,500, it shows the message. But this could trigger another sub-program to load the next level, next room, or whatever it is you're going to do in your game, okay? Simple detecting though with the world limit. Okay, so there's your lesson for today. There's one final stage we will look at, which is having multiple levels where it will detect and then move to the next level. But for today, see if you can get that far. Good luck.